From the darkest corner of the square, a group of people suddenly entered in a single file. Their attire clearly belonged to the warriors of the Monster Kingdom, each carrying a distinctly crafted armor. Above all, there were two exquisitely decorated sedan chairs, one in red and another in blue. The one in red was embellished with the motif of the sun, while the other was made with stars that brightly stood out against the deep blue background. Sponsored content. Both sedan chairs emerged from a layer optical haze that added a tint of mystery to their abrupt entrance. The embellishment of the bright sun was so vividly made that people could not keep their eyes too long on the sedan. The blue sedan, on the other hand, completely brought out the vast emptiness in the night sky that was fathomless, deep and distant. Gasped in horror, the Monster King immediately realized that something was gravely wrong. He recognized the soldiers at once. Those were the ones that he had secretly arranged for behind closed doors. Earlier, he had tried to summon them, but there was no reaction. But now, all of a sudden, they entered with two mysterious, odd-looking sedan chairs. He could not help but wonder who was behind the commotion. The laughter from before reminded him of the celestial officer that he very much trusted. It seems these people had interrupted the fight. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu retreated and found herself next to Fan Qianshi. The boy was still badly injured. Even with some proper dressings on his wounds, he still could not find his strength to stand. Nonetheless, he was clearly delighted as soon as he saw Gu Shijiu, but the moment of joy faded almost instantaneously as he apologized, "Master, I am of no use for you." Gu Shijiu put a finger on her lips to stop him from undervaluing his presence. "Don't give up now. You are still young." Whilst talking, she quietly transferred some of her spiritual power to Fan Qianshi to help him recover better. Meanwhile, she watched as the drama unveiled in the square. Sponsored content. Yang Jintian, are you rebelling against me? The Monster King asked in fury. Yang Jintian was the leader that the group of soldiers that emerged. Icily, he only responded with a stern look. A voice recording shell was then presented to play a small part of a conversation between two parties. It was loud and clear enough to be shared with everyone present. Gu Shijiu soon recognized the voices, and so did everyone else. It was a conversation between the Monster King and Di Fui. The conversation was about the rescue plan that the Monster King had previously proposed to Di Fui and the ways that he could save his dying sister. Clearly, the best solution that the Monster King could come up with was to sacrifice another innocent woman's life for his beloved sister. In order to gain the celestial officer's help, the Monster King had generously shared with him the details of the public execution in the square. The creator of the universe was the ultimate target that he aimed for. Once he had had enough with her, he did not mind sharing the woman with the celestial officer. Certainly, the Monster King was aware of Yao Tingting's misconduct, though not entirely. His arrogance and bias towards his sister had selfishly dismissed the many lives lost, by claiming that every living soul in the Monster King was born to serve him. As a group of slaves, these lives were not even worth mentioning. He did not care if they lived or died. As soon as the word spread, every audience in the square gasped in utter disbelief. People were indignant with his cruelty and the injustice that he simply dismissed. Gu Shijiu watched as the Monster King lost his composure. She could not help but feel sorry for him. How could he allow himself to expose the darkest secrets that should have remained kept? All of his words were now turned against himself. Sponsored content. On the other hand, Di Fui was indeed a maverick genius, judging from the methods that he had used to lure the Monster King into confessing his own bias and indirectly, his crimes that would spark hatred. The man had got a meticulous mind for such deliberate plans. It was unbelievable that he was only a 22-year-old man. The Monster King was alarmed as soon as the recording started. "It's made up. It is all made up. I have never said so. This is all but a trick by the man in the sedan to defame me." With a swift leap, he lunged himself towards Yang Jintian in a desperate attempt to remove the voice recording shell from his hand. He needed to wipe away the proof. He was swift, but not as swift as Gu Shijiu. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Zijia's teleportation gave her a massive edge. What are you afraid of? I have heard some parts of the conversation with my own ears. Are you too timid to admit your fault? Sponsored content. The Monster King said nothing. Yao Xingye, don't you panic just yet. There is more. Yang Jintian mocked him before playing the next clip. This time, it was between a man and a woman. The voice of the woman actually belonged to Yao Tingting, the monster princess. Di Fui was the man in the clip. The conversation happened in the prison cell not long ago. The people were outraged even further by her crimes. Each year, the number of missing people would escalate to an unprecedented high, which included many gentlemen and ladies from some of the most powerful families. Many of them turned to the Monster King for help. He promised them to investigate the matter, and in return, he pointed them arrows to foreign people of other kingdoms. The Animal Kingdom, the Celestial Kingdom, and even the Underworld had all been accused. The accusation also marked the beginning of many wars, thus losing more lives. To their surprise, Yao Tingting was the one who was solely responsible for all of the crimes. Even more to their disbelief, their loved ones had suffered inhumane torment before their demise. Most of the Monster King's closest guards had lost their loved ones. The Monster King vowed in fervor to avenge the fallen by attacking another kingdom, which he accused of committing the crime. In return for the king's favor, these men pledged their loyalty to him. Now that the truth was revealed, these armed men finally realized the Monster King's selfish intentions. It was never about revenge. They were only used as his pawns to conquer more territory. Sponsored content. Fake. It is all made up. Yao Xingye watched as his guards and men lost faith in him by distancing themselves. Panicked, he turned the facts around and denied all of his doings. He pointed at the celestial officer and accused him of making up stories. Aren't you going to admit any of your doings? A gentle voice from the red sedan responded. The curtain was pushed away, thus revealing a woman in red who slowly emerged from within. Her eyebrows were perfectly arched, giving her face an edgy touch. She had a stern look on her face as she gazed into the distance. Her red dress was beautifully draped onto her slim and slender figure. With every step, she moved with elegance. The woman was a rare beauty, with unparalleled looks and effortless grace. She let her hair down, but that did not shelter her pointy ears that were sharply edged. At her back, 9 fox tails could be seen swaying gently. Gu Shijiu gasped in astonishment as soon as she realized that the woman was actually the 9-tailed fox from the Tushan family. She roughly recalled that Tushan family used to rule the Monster Kingdom before she became dormant. Things changed when she woke up as the territory now belonged to the Flood Dragons. Her brief research revealed that the Tushan family was banished and killed overnight, about 30 centuries ago. Yao Xingye, of the Flood Dragon family, used to be the greatest guardian of the Fox King. He made solemn promises, committing to seek revenge for the Tushan family after that murderous night and initiated a series of investigations that linked him all the way to the Animal Kingdom. He then led a group of warriors to fight with the enemies and killed the murderers. With great success, came his throne as the Monster King, as he took over the Tushan family. The Tushan family held a respected name in the Monster Kingdom, known publicly as the Royal Family. If they were not banished, Yao Xingye would never have become the king. Hence, he skillfully courted the people by appealing to the search for the descendants of the Tushan family. Sponsored content. Just when everyone thought that the Tushan family no longer existed, the beauty made a surprise entrance that took everyone's breath away. The Fox family was naturally born with an irresistible charm, even more so with the woman's attractive beauty. She entered with great vigor as if an empress that had come to rule. In awe, the audience of the square fell to their knees. Meanwhile, Yao Xingye could no longer contain the surge of his anxiety. He had been trying to kill every survivor of the massacre of the Tushan family. He thought he had killed them all, but he was wrong. The woman gazed at Yao Xingye and said, "Yao Xingye, you defied the king and started a rebellion to end the lives of the Tushan family. We shall talk about this later. By the way, didn't you say that the clips were all made up? Let me show you what I have brought today to prove you wrong. She took out a pile of documents with clear indications of all the people that died in the hands of Yao Tingting, including the details of their death. These papers were spread amongst the crowd so that everyone could see the proofs. Also, she had witnesses available. She waved her hand to signal the entrance of a group of servants. These people had all served Yao Tingting before, so they had all witnessed her murderous acts. At a loss for words, the Monster King did not prepare for the detailed revelation that left him completely speechless. Most of the people were already boiling with fury and frustration. If it were not for the Monster King's kung fu, they would have already attacked him. At this point, Yao Xingye knew that his reign had passed. He took a swift leap into the air and made a jump towards the blue sedan chair. Tian Maoan, show yourself. A strike was launched mid-air, and since the Monster King's strength was unstoppable, the attack was certainly destructive. Other than Gu Shijiu, no one else would able to withstand the strike. Nonetheless, Gu Shijiu was too distracted by Fan Qianshi. When she saw the attack being launched, it was already too late for her to change anything. She thought that Di Fui would not be powerful enough to defend himself. The worst that could happen would be seeing the sedan being shattered into pieces, along with the man. The Monster King went in with full force, only to be stopped right before the sedan. The blue sedan remained in one piece. Yao Xingye, on the other hand, was the one who suffered the impact. He staggered and moved back in retreat, not long before he spat out a mouthful of blood. He steadied himself and looked at the sedan in clear defiance. Tian Maoan, what have you done to me? The curtains were pushed aside, allowing the man to walk out of the sedan. He was wearing a set of plain white robes, equipped with a mask of ghostly features to cover his face. The mask was able to conceal his identity, but not his otherworldly aura. His powerful presence would leave an unforgettable impression on anyone. The Monster King's followers were the first ones to recognize the man. He was the celestial officer who recently emerged as an important figure, Tian Maoan. The man was not entirely friendly. He sometimes behaved differently, so no one dared to get too close to him. However, he was not intimidating. Hence, the people of the Monster Kingdom were not afraid of him. Occasionally, they would even put him in trouble on purpose just to test him. Things had changed as the man was now equipped with unprecedented power. Certainly, his grace had also managed to capture the attention of many women. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu silently judged him. This man came with many different identities. As far as she was concerned, the man was referred to as Feng Jiai or Di Fui. But now, he was Tian Maoan. She could no longer tell which one was real. She took a look at Di Fui and then looked back to the foxy woman. Apparently, they were a team. Even without any proof, Gu Shijiu already knew that this was all but a great plan that Di Fui had come up with to set the Monster King in a trap. Each and every arrangement was carefully planned. He made an appearance with the foxy woman of the Tushan family because he needed to help her rebuild her family's royal legacy. Gu Shijiu had, once again, unknowingly contributed to a small part of his great plan. She took her contribution as a favor for his kindness in saving her and her servants' lives. From now on, it would only be natural for the foxy woman to regain her title as the heir to the throne. On the other hand, Yao Xingye had completely fallen into the trap that Di Fui had set up for him, so there was nothing he could do in his defense. Defeated, he was caught and held captive. The great revelation was a show that Gu Shijiu thoroughly enjoyed. However, with nothing left for her to see, she decided to leave with Fan Qianshi. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 28:13, Master, shall we go? Sponsored content. Perhaps Fan Qianshi was numb from sitting down too long. He could not keep his balance as he stood up and fell right into Gu Zijia's arms. She quickly supported him by the waist to help him stand up straight. Fan Qianshi was mesmerized by her captivating scent that one could only notice when in close proximity to her. It was as refreshing as the sweet morning dew. Back in the day when Gu Shijiu taught him kung fu, they would get close enough with each other for him to get a whiff of her scent. He missed that. Gu Shijiu had been pushing him away for some time now, so he never had the chance to get close to her again. Hence, the proximity this time around stirred his restless heart, making him reluctant to leave. Gu Shijiu wanted to let go of him but noticed that his body was slanted to one side. Puzzled, she continued to support him. Sponsored content fan Qianxue was happy to be with her. However, he looked away for a moment and caught Di Fui staring at him. With a smirk, Di Fui looked at him as if he knew what the boy was thinking. Defensively, Fan Qianxue felt an urge to keep away from the man. "Master, shall we go?" Gu Shijiu refused to stay any longer either. "Let's go. Divine Lord, I have something to say." Di Fui approached Gu Shijiu to speak to her. Sponsored content, Di Fui gazed at her intently before continuing, "Divine Lord, I would like to thank you for your help. You have misled him to think that your power has been deteriorated, thus luring him one step closer into the trap and exposing his crimes. You have done a great deal for the monster kingdom, so I would like to invite you to stay for a feast. Divine Lord, I heard that you are the one who came up with the plan, which, in turn, provides me with an opportunity to rebuild my family's legacy. I, Tu Shanying, would like to thank you for your kindness." The nine-tailed fox gracefully approached Gu Shijiu and bowed before her as a token of appreciation. "Divine Lord, would you care to stay for a feast? Your presence will be a blessing for the people of the monster kingdom." With such an invitation, there was no room for rejection. Gu Shijiu thought about their invitations and could immediately understand that it was yet another plan from Di Fui to achieve two things in one go. Firstly, the fact about the deterioration of her power should remain a secret. He made it public that they were joint forces so that no one would have any doubts about the condition of her health. Secondly, he was trying to make her choose a side. As the creator of the universe, her recognition was needed to help Tu Shanying become the next ruler of the monster kingdom. Being the most respected figure on Earth, her recommendation would come in handy if Tu Shanying chose to ascend the throne. Hence, Di Fui's plan was perfect for both intentions. Her secret would remain a secret, while Tu Shanying would take control of the kingdom. Nonetheless, Gu Shijiu did not like the plan very much. She did not like it when someone became too calculative about her involvement. She also refused to taste the fruit of someone else's success. Moreover, she barely knew Tu Shanying. In fact, she did not know Di Fui any better either. She did not even know the man's real name. All things considered, she gave them a polite smile as she rejected their invitation. "Thank you, but a feast is not something I fancy." Sponsored content, she immediately drew a line between both parties. Clearly, she had no intention to side Tu Shanying. She glanced at Tu Shanying, who now looked slightly pale at the rejection. With a gentle tap on her shoulder, Gu Shijiu politely said, "There is no need for you to feel dejected. I will always help those who are capable and honorable. Perhaps we will get a chance to sit down for a drink, someday." She did not look at Di Fui again before she swiftly teleported away along with Fan Qianxue. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. No one in the world had the same power as Gu Shijiu, who else was capable of disappearing in an instant. Her superpower had filled the crowd with awe. Sponsored content. Some of the people quickly bent their knees and uttered, "Goodbye, Divine Lord." Di Fui caught himself contemplating, while gently tapping on his bamboo flute in his palm. There was hardly anything that he could not solve, but he had no idea why she rejected the invitation. Was she annoyed? He wondered, how did your power increase almost twofold? Back in Tianin Valley, Gu Shijiu was trying to find out more about Fan Qianxi's latest developments. Silently, Fan Qianxue remained on the ground, kneeling. Sponsored content. Speak. Gu Shijiu had no patience for the boy. Scared, Fan Qianxue guiltily confessed, Qianyin's life was at stake, leaving me no room for any delays, so I went for the most stupid idea. After leaving the restaurant, I ventured into the forbidden land of illusions and took an illusionary fruit. His statement ended in a stammer. Gu Shijiu answered somewhat sarcastically, although the fruit can increase your power, the effect will only last temporarily for 4 hours. When it is over, your nervous system will be greatly damaged, and it might restrict your spiritual power to only half of what you used to possess. Haven't I told you that it is not worth the price? Have you forgotten it all? I have not forgotten your words. I was desperate for a way out. So what if you managed to level up your power? Could you defeat Yao Xingye? What you have done completely puts your own health at stake. Why didn't you think properly before you acted? Did you really think that I would let Qian Yan die? Sponsored content fan Qianshi had never seen her so frustrated. I now know my mistake, he timidly said, without even looking at her. Gu Shijiu glared at him. You did this on purpose, didn't you? You did this because we fought. Panicked, Fan Qianshi broke out in cold sweat. I dare not. I did not act rashly because we had a fight. I was only worried that you were not in good condition to fight them all alone. I only wanted to help. It is my fault. In fact, I did not help at all. Instead, I became another burden of yours. I am sorry for my mistake. I deserve to be punished. He continued to kneel while being drenched in a cold sweat. Even Wu Qianyan joined him to beg for Gu Zijia's forgiveness. Gu Shijiu observed them both and continued, Fan Qianshi, I once told you that the use of illusionary fruit was forbidden, and yet you did the direct opposite of what I said. Your punishment is unavoidable, though I can sympathize with your intention. Find your way into the ice cave in the hills and stay in isolation for a month. She then threw him a bottle of medicine and said, use this to treat your injuries. She took another look at Wu Qianyan. You are going, too. Relieved, Fan Qianshi quickly thanked her for her forgiveness. He knew that the ice cave was the most suitable place for him to recover for the time being. Since his punishment was assigned to him based on his needs, he knew that she cared. Wu Qianyan was relieved, too. She was happy with the arrangement. She had always wanted to be closely associated with Fan Qianshi, but the interaction was not mutual. The month-long stay in the cave was the chance that she had been looking forward to. After assigning appropriate tasks to her disciples, Gu Shijiu finally had time for herself. She went to her treasure room and placed all of her items back where they belonged. Those were the things that Yao Xingye had unapologetically taken without her consent. Sponsored content. Some of the items were equipped with magical powers, which were required to support the wizardry barrier that kept the valley safe. She could not simply keep them away in her storage. This place used to be a safe place, but the raid on her home changed her mind. Before she went away, she added a few more barriers to increase its security. It had been a long day for her, so she was actually a little tired. No one knew herself better than she did. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Although Gu Shijiu was dominating the battle against Yao Xingye, she was not entirely comfortable during the fight. Her body had never stopped aching. During the encounter, she realized that another visit to the glacier was inevitable. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu could no longer locate the glacier even though she used the same path as before. She remembered the way, but it did not lead her to the desired destination. For a moment, she wondered if a wizardry barrier hid the glacier. Nonetheless, she dismissed the thought quickly because no wizardry barrier could possibly escape her eyes. If the glacier had been in a wizardry barrier, she would have easily noticed it before. She lingered around the hills where she had originally exited the place. However, even after a thorough search, she still could not find her way in. Alas, she gave up. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu suspected that the glacier was either mobile or would only appear at a particular time. Since she did not have other information, she had no hope of returning to the glacier for cultivation. Could Di Fui be the help she needed? But even if he could help, would he agree to help? The man was beyond calculative, so Gu Shizhou was slightly reluctant to meet him or to have anything to do with him. She decided to let things flow naturally. There was not much time left for her, anyway, so it did not matter anymore if she got to live another day or two. Her years of cultivation had trained her to reconcile herself to different circumstances. Life or death did not matter too much. Meanwhile, the magnificent views in the mountains made her linger a little bit more in the woods. The place was rather quiet today as only animals were present in the solitary woodland. Not a single woodsman was around. Sponsored content. Deep within the valley, there was a garden of blossoming flowers. The hills were ablaze with tiny white blossoms. From afar, the entire area of white blossoms looked like a large fluffy cloud. It surely was a feast for the eyes. Gu Shizhou excitedly walked towards the land of white flowers for a pleasant stroll. However, a sudden gentle sound of running water caught her attention, and she hurried towards the sound of the river. White flower petals stayed afloat on the gurgling water, like flocks of white ducklings flowing down the stream. At the end of the stream, there was a natural lake. Strangely enough, these petals were gathered around a dark hole in the middle of the pond. Apparently, the running water was directed to flow right into the hole. The water was as clear as crystal without any sorts of contamination. As it was rare to find such a clean lake, Gu Shizhou looked as if she had just found a hidden treasure. Surely, she would not leave without first dipping in the water. There was no one around, not even an animal. Hence, it was the perfect place for her to go for skinny dipping. She removed her robes and went into the lake. The water was slightly chilly, but the cold never bothered her anyway. She followed the flow and started swimming across the pool. Much to her surprise, she realized that the spiritual energy of the water was even stronger than in the Tianin Valley. Immediately convinced, she decided that it was the place for her cultivation. The lake was a deep one, like a bottomless pit. She used her spiritual power to sense the presence of any ferocious beings that were hidden in the unseen depths, but there was nothing that caught her attention. It was clear to her that this was the right place for her. The minor inconvenience of the lake was its clear water. Her naked body could be seen entirely from above the water. Fortunately, there was no one around. So, she stayed submerged in the water with her legs crossed and cast spells on her fingertips as soon as she began her cultivation. Sponsored content. The serenity did not last long before a sudden splash of water caused the water around her to swill. Astonished, she quickly looked around. Someone could be seen rising dramatically from the depths of the pool. However, she could only see the person's silky black hair from the back. The person noticed her presence and quickly turned around. Their eyes met abruptly. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Both of them examined one another, but Gu Shizhou was the first to panic. The intruder was none other than Di Fui. Sponsored content. Gu Shizhou never thought they would meet in the wild. More importantly, she was naked. She quickly kicked and splashed water onto his face in order to distract him and cause a small turbulence in the water. Gu Shizhou seized the window of opportunity to return to the land. Her robes were automatically directed to her, and soon, she was effortlessly dressed. The entire escape took place rather quickly. Hence, she staggered a little to her feet when she landed. Other than that, everything went smoothly. Nonetheless, her heart continued to pound in her chest. Being seen naked by another man could be awkward to deal with. She wished she could just disappear right at that moment, but the man already emerged from the water. His intense gaze never left her. Leaving would only make her look defeated. It was not an option for the creator of the universe, who should keep her composure at all times. Why are you here? Gu Shizhou returned his gaze but was soon embarrassed by what she saw. Sponsored content. The man was naked from the waist up. Although only his head and shoulders were above the water, the clear water was no shield to the rest of his lean, muscular body. There was only a thin layer of undergarment that covered him from his waist to his ankles. Normally, His muscular body was completely hidden when he was dressed. He usually looked like a man of poise and grace. She never thought that he was actually a very well-built man, physically. The stature of his body was beyond perfect. Every inch of his muscle was firm and shapely, contributing to his unworldly beauty and effortless grace. Especially now that he was casually undressed with wet hair clinging onto his naked skin, it was a rather breathtaking view. Di Fui finally recognized her. "I did not know you were here. We seem destined to meet." She was unsure if destiny was a blessing or a disaster. Nevertheless, Gu Shijiu emphasized her question again, sternly, "You have yet to answer my question." Sponsored content. Di Fui took it easy and slowly approached the shore. "Divine Lord, I was here first. I should be the one directing the question at you." He was right. He did not emerge from the depths of the pool on purpose, only to catch her naked. In the blink of an eye, he was already by the shore. Perplexed, she took a few steps back. "What are you doing?" "I am getting out of the water." "Do you really think that I will be in the water for long?" Droplets of water continued to linger on his supple skin, which sparkled like diamonds under the light. Just then, Gu Shijiu realized that it was inappropriate for her to stare. Therefore, she turned around to avoid looking at him. "Get dressed. I have something to ask you." Di Fui hesitated a little while trying to get dressed. In amazement, the view of Gu Zijia's back caught his attention. "Sure," he answered without any resistance, which was rare. Sponsored content. It did not take long for him to get fully dressed like the gentleman that she used to know. However, his complexion was unusually paler than his healthy self. Water continued to drip from his hair, which somewhat affected his sleek outlook. He wanted to dry his hair with a spell, but Gu Shijiu thought that he was taking a little too long. Without any time to waste, she cast a cleaning spell to dry him up in an instant. Her act obviously caught him by surprise. Meanwhile, Gu Shijiu sat on the top of a big rock. "Shouldn't you be helping the two family to succeed to the monster kingdom? Why are you here, all of a sudden?" Di Fui put a casual smile on his face and avoided her question. "Did you ask me to stay only to ask me about that?" He did not answer any of her questions. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us." Gu Shijiu was obviously annoyed. Being the most respected figure on Earth, people would always hold her in high regard and answer her every question without hesitation. However, the man was an exception. He was polite but never ceased to keep a distance from her. He never let his guard down with her. Sponsored content. Reluctant to waste another minute arguing, Gu Shijiu went straight to her point. "Where is the glacier? Where can I find the entrance?" Di Fui still gazed at her intently. "I thought you were going to punish me," he slowly answered. Gu Shijiu did not quite understand. "After all, I have seen you in the water, by accident." Utterly embarrassed, that was the last topic that she wanted to talk about. Sponsored content. "As you said, it was an accident. You are so young, so I shall not be bothered. Don't you require any form of compensation?" Di Fui's intention was questionable. "What kind of compensation?" Gu Shijiu asked him back, curiously. Soon, she resorted to a solution. "Of course, you do need to compensate for my loss. Tell me about the entrance to the glacier, and that will be all," she offered. She was reluctant to lower herself to the level of a young boy. Di Fui continued to observe her. "That is all." Bewildered, Gu Shijiu did not expect him to offer his compensation so eagerly. She started to think of him as a decent man. Her impression of him had certainly changed a little, but it was a good chance for her to get what she wanted. "If you really feel sorry, you may take me personally to the entrance of the glacier. It would be great if you could share with me the rules about the place," she added another request. Sponsored content. Di Fui was unimpressed. All of a sudden, the water in the pool could be seen bubbling from within the depths. Panicked, He grasped Gu Shijiu by her wrist and urged, "This place is not safe. We need to go." As Gu Shijiu was still perplexed, he was too fast for her to keep up in an instant. Hence, she was literally pulled away. "Hey, what are we running away from?" The answer lay in the water. Soon, the pool exploded violently. A gloom of violence and grudge immediately blotted out the sky, thus turning the bright afternoon sky into a state of dim, hazy glow. Gu Shijiu looked behind and saw a giant, black shadow emerging from the pool right away. Darkness fell upon them. The only light was actually coming from the head of the giant shadow. Sponsored content. Fortunately, Gu Zijia's night vision helped her to see better in the dark. She noticed that the giant figure greatly resembled a dragon with pitch-black scales layered on every inch of its skin. Though black, its scales remained glossy and its eyes remained bright, like a pair of lights that flickered inconsistently in the dark. Could it be a dragon? No, it must be a candle dragon, she thought. The candle dragon was a mythical creature from very ancient times. It was neither a celestial being nor a demon, but its character was nothing short of violent. The slightest disturbance could result in the total destruction of the entire city. Gu Shijiu never thought it had lain hidden beneath the water. Before she went into the pool, she first made sure that there was nothing around, so this came as a surprise to her. Could the deterioration of her spiritual power have affected the precision? She had questions, but it was not the time to ask them. At least, Gu Shijiu no longer depended on Di Fui to run on foot. Instead, she chose to teleport. The candle dragon was a violent, ferocious being as the result of its birth from the essence of heaven and earth. It had been around for at least tens of thousands of years. If she still had her full power, the candle dragon would not pose any risk to her at all. However, her current circumstances left her no chance to fight. She had to run away as fast as she could. Fortunately, nothing was able to surpass the speed of her teleportation skill thus far. Very soon, they were already 100 miles away from the pool. But even from that far, they could still hear the creature howling in protest. The whole ground shook along with the intensity of the sound. The candle dragon was a moody creature. Once there were no disturbances in sight, it would usually quiet down and restore tranquility to the land. This was what Gu Shijiu had expected it to do. Therefore, after traveling hundreds of miles, Gu Shijiu wanted to take a rest. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Since Gu Shijiu had stopped to catch her breath, Di Fui immediately commented, "Not here. It will still come for us." Sponsored content. The sky above them was now already blotted out by a giant piece of dark shadow. It was the candle dragon, again. Gu Shijiu was dumbstruck. Why did the candle dragon insist on the pursuit? Whatever the reason, it looked like she had to teleport again. However, her body was a little weak to withstand the rapid exhaustion of her spiritual power. Therefore, after a few rounds, she started to suffer from blackouts. Before she collapsed, she quickly grabbed Di Fui's sleeves to steady her from swaying her body. Oddly enough, the candle dragon was still coming after them, like a stubborn maggot. Could there be an end for this pursuit? Gu Shijiu took a deep breath before continuing to teleport away, but Di Fui would not let her. "You cannot keep doing this. I will take over from here," he announced while carrying her in his arms. Swiftly, they dived into the ground with his ground drilling. Gu Shijiu patiently followed. She was familiar with the ground drilling now. Even the routes reminded her of their last trip together. The path seemed to lead them all the way to the glacier. Although they did not enter the ground from the same starting point, the route remained the same. Sponsored content. At this point, Gu Shijiu was absolutely exhausted. Blood rushed through her veins in an unsteady flow. She could no longer keep herself awake. Hence, she closed her eyes for a short nap in his arms. As expected, they emerged from the ground into the glacier. However, the candle dragon was capable of ground drilling, so it went into the underground in pursuit of them for a while. It soon gave up, as the routes that Di Fui used were unusual and hard to follow. Also, the puzzling spell that he used along the way managed to confuse the creature and eventually left it far behind. It was the same icy peaks and the same compaction of snow that made Gu Shijiu feel at home for a moment. Even the vortex of chilly winds was all too familiar. Di Fui tripped when they first arrived and almost threw Gu Shijiu out of his arms. Luckily, she was awake now and was alert of her surroundings. I can walk by myself, Gu Shijiu struggled to stand. She shuddered in the cold as soon as she got onto her feet. Hold this. A red umbrella was offered to shield her from the snow. It was the same act of kindness from before, and Gu Shijiu happily accepted the offer. Are you hurt, too? She asked. Sponsored content pale and drawn, Di Fui looked just as weak as she did. Did the candle dragon do this to you? She made a guess. Di Fui nodded. The candle dragon was not even supposed to be there, was it? The pool leads all the way out to Earthsea. It used to be there, Di Fui answered accordingly. Gu Shijiu knew about Earthsea. It was buried deep within the Earth's core, so it was known as the Earthsea for carrying a lot of water in the ground. Regular seawater was in crystal clear tint of blue, whereas the water that came from the Earthsea was as dark as ink. With a constant temperature of boiling water, nothing on Earth could possibly survive in the harsh environment. The location of the Earthsea was unknown. She remembered clearly that she had never been there. More accurately speaking, she had never found the place yet. Sponsored content. Surprisingly, the pool turned out to be the entrance of Earthsea. When she saw him, he must have just emerged from Earthsea. How did you come across its path? Gu Shijiu was impressed by his bravery. He dared to fight a candle dragon alone. Di Fui took a black egg out of his storage bag and answered, for this. Gu Shijiu was dumbstruck. She finally knew why the candle dragon had been tirelessly pursuing them. The man had stolen its egg. It all made sense to her now. She observed the egg, which was almost the size of a basket. It was glossy on its black surface, as though associated with a circle of light around it. Are you going to hatch the egg and use the little creature as your majestic pet? The candle dragon was considered as a mythical creature, which was absolutely difficult to be subjected to domestication. It was almost impossible to be tamed and trained when it was fully grown, which led Gu Shijiu to think that the egg was for domestication. Di Fui put the egg down on the snow. No, not this one. What is it about, then? I heard it tastes good. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijiu did not know what to say, as what he said made absolutely no sense. She had to talk him out of the crazy idea. I honestly think that this is a reckless waste. Sponsored content. She never thought of the man as someone who ate so greedily. He would risk his life to dive into the core of the pool just for an egg that he wanted to eat. When something is properly used, it is never a waste, no matter how valuable it sounds. Di Fui took the egg in his hands and asked, speaking of which, how many ways do you know to cook an egg? He gazed at Gu Shijiu for an answer. About that, I know nothing. She was slightly embarrassed by her lack of knowledge of culinary skills. As a divine being, she was well respected wherever she went, even though she hardly remembered anything that happened before her extensively long sleep. She never had to ask for anything, as people would always offer her everything. Moreover, her survival no longer depended on food. It did not matter if she ate or not. Even so, she would still visit every corner of the world in search of gastronomic delights, not for survival, but for the satisfaction of good food that helped her immerse herself in the mundane world. Sponsored content. She could easily name the good food in all 6 worlds. However, she was never a cook. She turned the question to him instead and asked, how many ways do you know of? 1, Di Fui hesitantly said. They looked at one another in mutual understanding that they both failed in cooking. Gu Shijiu was curious about the taste of the egg but still felt that cooking it would be a waste. It was not easy to get the egg, so hatching the egg sounded like a better idea. Therefore, she came up with an excuse. For such a valuable egg, we should get someone professional to handle it. With this size, it can be turned into a few dishes. Di Fui dismissed her suggestion. No can do, it has to be cooked right here. Let's just boil it. The taste of its freshness will be retained if we boil it. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu was still in awe. May I ask, how many times have you cooked this sort of egg? Di Fui pointed out 3 fingers. Not many, only 3, if this time counts. This belongs to the majestic being, after all. It is insufficient and, most importantly, inappropriate for frequent hunting. Also, I do not like to keep eating the same food. Typically, I don't want to eat something more than 3 times. Gu Shijiu was shocked. Have you just pushed the candle dragons to extinction? I do know that it is hard for the candle dragon to breed, it is usually only 1 egg for a nest. Are there many of them in Earthsea? Di Fui shook his head. Not too many. I know that there are not more than 100. The place is really their home. Sponsored content. She was not expecting the amount. Gu Shijiu thought there were only 3 or 4 of them left. Luckily, 3 stolen eggs would not drive the candle dragon towards extinction. What effect does the egg have? Gu Shijiu was intrigued by the scarcity of such a valuable resource. She had never used such an egg in her entire medical career. With someone who was brave enough to hunt for such an egg, she had thought that it would surely be used to hatch the creature. You will know about it soon, Di Fui simply said. The man was trying to be mysterious. Gu Shijiu asked no further questions. Since she could not help with the cooking part, she decided to take the time to meditate. Not too far away, a whirling mass of cold air was slowly terrorizing the ice. She wanted to venture into the vortex to restore some of her spiritual energy. However, she was immediately stopped. Not now. If you go now, you will be frozen into an ice statue. I just came out of the vortex a few days ago. I used to be in its core for a few days. It was then, not now. Every time we visit, the place will be reset. We need to comply with the new rules. Gu Shijiu thought about the pill that he offered to her. Could you give me the pill that you had given me before? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Di Fui crossed his arms and replied, the pill is rather valuable. I do not offer it to anyone quite as frequently. Also, I remember that we do not owe each anything other anymore, so I do not see the point. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu disdained his tone of mockery. She took another look at the vortex of spiritual energy swirling in the air and was rather troubled. It was like staring at a huge pot of treasure that she was not allowed to touch. I can offer you something else in exchange for the pill. Take a look and see what you fancy, Gu Shijiu suggested while opening up her storage bag wide enough for him to choose something. She then took out dozens of other stuff, each with its own value. Di Fui took a casual look. You do have many valuable things to offer, but I do not like any of these. I have no intention to trade. Gu Shijiu clenched her fists in mild irritation. Determined, she proceeded to take out a pair of bracelets from a very hidden corner of her storage bag. The bracelets shone with 7 colored rays, glistening with a sense of auspiciousness and beauty the moment they were presented, as ethereal as infinite light. I will trade the pill for this pair of bracelets. She was concerned that he might not know about the bracelet's value and added, the jade was harvested from within the cores of the Buzhou Mountains. The pair of jade bracelets were made naturally over time. These bracelets are treasures, both equipped with spiritual senses. In times of danger, they can be turned into glass dragons to protect you. Sponsored content. She gave the bracelets a flick, turning them into a pair of glass dragons of lustrous white and yellow. The yellow one was as shiny as gold, whereas the white one was as pure as snow. They surrounded Gu Shijiu obediently, winking and nodding to her. Their cuteness was almost irresistible. However, Di Fui was not interested at all. These things are so girly. They look fancy, but are not practical. Gu Shijiu, in her defense, answered, these things are not only for girls. Have you seen these glass dragons? They will choose their own master and his or her partner. Once matched, they would hook themselves onto their newly found masters. You are still young, so I am sure there will come a time when you look for a wife. With these bracelets, it will be easy. Di Fui finally responded. Are they made for matchmaking? Why haven't they found someone for you? After a pause, Gu Shijiu still could not hide her amusement. As the creator of the universe, marriage is not quite suitable for me. Sponsored content, why not? Di Fui asked. The creator is responsible for every existence in the world. I need to be compassionate for all and not affectionate to one. Personal relationships should be avoided at all costs so that I can dispense equal justice to all. Di Fui gazed at her. Do you mean to say that the Divine Lord should never fall in love? Yes. Who made this rule? Sponsored content, about that, you are the creator of the universe. Everything that has ever existed, or will ever exist, is all created by you, Divine Lord. That means so are the rules. If something is not reasonable, you can always change it. Which part of it is unreasonable? Divine Lord, being in love is one of the many forms of love. You have friends and disciples, and you have shown them the qualities of kindness and humanity. Even your servant was showered with kindness. I know that you are capable of loving someone, so why should you keep yourself from falling in love? Gu Shijiu was a little dumbstruck, so she started reminiscing. Many years ago, there seemed to be more than just one creator. She had a feeling that she was not alone, but could not remember anything clearly. Nonetheless, they could have passed on. Like everyone else, catastrophe would strike, and immortalization would occur. She, for example, was going through the final stage of her long life. With or without the rule, there was no reason for her to find a partner. Certainly, she was not going to share that fact with him. She did not want to linger on the topic, so with a smile, she said in a soft voice, young man, you are going off topic. I intend to trade these bracelets for the pill. We are not here to discuss marriages. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Young man? Di Fui asked, half-smilingly. Divine Lord, how young do you think I am? Sponsored content, to me, you are only a child. She then said magnanimously, I am so much older than you. Before she could utter another word, Di Fui was already flashing a mirror in front of her. In the mirror, she did not look as refined and elegant as she remembered. In fact, she was caught by utter surprise by her reflection. There was a young lady that was only about 14 or 15 years old, staring back at her. Her eyes were bright and beautiful, looking as delicate as ever. Gu Shijiu was still in shock. Subconsciously, she touched her face, and the lady in the mirror did the same. Something was wrong. Had the mirror reflected a different age, or did she really look that young? Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu skipped all the unnecessary questions and proceeded to take out her own mirror. She would assume that it would depict reality as it appeared. The mirror was so clear to the point where one could see the pores on their supple skin. There were no filters or beautifying effects on Gu Shijiu's mirror. However, the reflection in the mirror was still a young, delicate girl, nothing different from the one she saw earlier. She had become younger. No wonder the length of her dress bothered her a little. She kept catching her foot on its hem and stumbled a few times. At first, she thought she did not tie her dress properly, but that was not the case. Could her dying day have been brought forward? Swiftly, she briefly calculated the remaining days that she had on Earth, but there was no result. Something major must have occurred to change the course of her life. However, her immortalization remained inevitable. Living a few extra years did not make any difference. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu soon got over the fact that she was dying. However, she could not believe that she was being arrogant on account of her seniority with this young face of hers. It was rather odd. She kept the mirror away and said with all seriousness, "My tender looks do not define me." "All right, we should not be talking about this matter. We are getting derailed again. Would you like to trade the pills for my bracelets?" "All right, I am taking your offer, but first, I would like to examine it." He took the golden bracelet and put it on his wrist right away. However, it did not attach itself to his wrist immediately. "You need to drip some blood on it to identify yourself." Gu Shijiu taught him the proper way. Sponsored content. Di Fui dripped a small drop of his blood on the bracelet. Soon, the bracelet turned into a glass dragon and surrounded Di Fui for a while, as though examining if the man was worthy of its submission. After one round, the glass dragon went straight to his wrist and nodded at him. It then turned and circled itself into a bracelet and fitted well on his wrist. Gu Shijiu was slightly surprised, as she knew that the bracelet was quite picky when it came to finding a master. She tried to give the bracelet away to someone else before, but it refused to submit itself and took a bite on the man's wrist instead. It was easy, this time. The bracelet was indeed a good choice. Delighted, Gu Shijiu handed him with another bracelet. "Keep this one. It will bring you surprises in the future." Di Fui took it close to his face to have a closer look at it. He remained unconvinced. "Does it work? How do you know that it is going to work? Have you tested it?" She indeed had not. However, she could not tell him that. "This is a magical item. There is no need to examine it," she casually said. She wanted to make something up, but suddenly, the white bracelet flew out of Di Fui's hand and turned into a white glass dragon. It surrounded Gu Shijiu in the same manner as it did to Di Fui moments ago and abruptly hooked itself onto her wrist. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijiu was utterly shocked. Meanwhile, Di Fui took a look at the bracelet in his hand, then at hers. He smiled at her, but only in a way that confused her even more. Sponsored content. This thing has been around for tens of thousands of years. It is probably going a little haywire now. It must have thought that I am still its master, so it came right back to me. While she tried to explain herself, she tapped on the bracelet as if to wake it up. "Hey, little white. Time to get to your new master." However, the bracelet remained unresponsive. Gu Shijiu tried the hard way. "If you refuse to obey me, I will break you into two halves." Nonetheless, the bracelet still ignored her instruction. Amused, Di Fui stood aside and watched as she performed multiple tricks to get the bracelet off her wrist. He could not believe that the name that she had given the bracelet was unbelievably simple. "If it is named Little White, should mine be called Little Yellow?" Sponsored content. No. Gu Shijiu was against it. Little Yellow does not sound right. Who would give it such a bad name? What is it called, then? Little Gold. Dumbstruck, Di Fui paused for a little while. "Let us just agree that Little Gold is more appropriate," Di Fui answered. Gu Shijiu continued to try to get the bracelet off her wrist, but nothing worked. It was stuck. There was no way she could take it off. Sponsored content. Perplexed, Di Fui took another look at the bracelet on his wrist. He never took the matter seriously, nor had he thought about marrying someone. Although he was still young, he made up his mind that he would not fall in love throughout his life. As for the Divine Lord, what he had done for her was mostly to take advantage of her powerful nature and then compensate her for the losses that she had to suffer. However, it turned out that there was also a small amount of emotions involved, though he did not see that coming. Gu Shijiu started to panic. Desperately, she started thinking if she should try taking the bracelet off using one of her weapons. She looked up and was immediately locked in Di Fui's intense gaze. His eyes indicated to her that he was smiling. "It can help me find my future wife, right?" he added. Gu Shijiu could feel sweat dripping along her skin. "Technically, yes. So, are you the one? Sponsored content, this. This must have been a huge misunderstanding. It must be reluctant to leave me. My spiritual power is at my all-time low now, so perhaps it thinks that it should stay to protect me. By the time my power comes back, it will let go of my wrist, surely. Di Fui answered with a tone of respect. It seems this is also a righteous bracelet. Of course. Di Fui laughed at the absurdity. He did not comment any further and soon became occupied with his task of cooking the egg. The water in the pot was actually melted from snow, and the man was using some unique firewood. It was a kind of red sandalwood, which became fragrant when burned. Troubled, Gu Shizhou did not expect that her good intention would end up in such a major misunderstanding. All she wanted was the pill. Anyway, since the golden bracelet had already been given away, he should at least give the pill to her now. Fui, shouldn't you be giving me the pill now? Slowly, Di Fui used the samadhi fire to burn the red sandalwood. Divine Lord, what you initially offered to me was a pair of bracelets. At the moment, I only have one, and the other one is with you. Since I only have one side, should I give you only half of the pill? Gu Shizhou was speechless. What use could there be with only half of the pill? Clearly, the man was wicked. He kept making up excuses to deny her request. In that case, would you please give little gold back to me? Gu Shizhou reached out her hand to him. Di Fui glanced at the bracelet on his wrist and answered casually, I cannot take it off either. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Di Fui had secretly tried to remove it earlier, but the bracelet was stubbornly intact. He would have lost his temper long ago if someone else had given him something that he did not want and yet had no way to remove. The bracelet was, however, an exception. The more he looked at it, the more he became fond of it. Sponsored content. Meanwhile, Gu Shizhou did not believe him. That is impossible. How did Little Gold identify its master so quickly? Di Fui understood her concerns, so he offered his hand to her generously. You may try if you do not believe me. Gu Shizhou decided to give it a go herself. She stretched out one hand to secure his wrist and then tried to remove the bracelet with her other hand, only to prove that the bracelet remained securely fastened. He was right. Di Fui watched as she became occupied with the task at hand and was lost in the moment. Her hands were small and delicate, while her fingers long and slender. Even without any polishing, her nails were naturally toned in pink. He was especially drawn to her soft, supple skin. He then turned his attention to her face. Her face was silky smooth, as tender as the delicate petals of cherry blossoms. The more he looked at her, the more he was attracted to her plump, sexy lips. Sponsored content. Gu Shizhou was unaware of his gaze as she was busy with the bracelet. Sadly, she realized that the bracelet could not be returned. That was it. Perhaps, it would make things easier if she tried to get her own bracelet off instead. She refused to believe that she was unable to take off a simple bracelet, so she let go of Di Fui's hand. All right, I will just give the bracelet away for free. Frustrated, she did not care about the item that she had given away. She cared about the pill that she would never get. The thought of spending the rest of her time in the appearance of a young girl terrified her. Gu Shizhou took another look at him and started wondering if she should take the pill from him by force or by threat. Would you care for a drink? Di Fui suddenly offered her a bottle gourd of wine. The cap had been unsealed, filling the air with its wonderful aroma. Gu Shizhou liked to drink. She had tasted many wines to know that the one that he held was a great bottle. Therefore, she put her troubles aside and took out a wine glass. Yes, please. Sponsored content. With a smile, Di Fui filled her cup. Gu Shizhou wanted to down it right away but was stopped by a sudden grasp by her wrist. Drink it later, with the egg, Di Fui added. His hot palm made her feel uncomfortable, so Gu Shizhou involuntarily pulled her hand away. She looked at the bronze pot and asked, are you going to share the egg with me? Yes, in exchange for the bracelet that you have just given to me. I do not like to be indebted to someone else for their kindness. I am not asking for the egg. I want the pill. If you are going to make up for my loss, I would suggest you give me one I want. Sponsored content, the pill has to be exchanged for a pair of bracelets, as promised. It would not be appropriate for you to go against your words. Gu Shijiu said nothing more. In the meantime, Di Fui continued to cook the egg. He opened up the lid, and the egg smelled really great. He fished the egg out of the pot and cut it into 4 pieces. Here, try it, he offered a portion to her. Gu Shijiu could not vent her frustration at Di Fui. The man was quite a rascal, but he could always come out with proper reasons to defend actions. Hence, she decided to stop arguing with him. The egg had certainly caught her attention. She never knew that a candle dragon's egg was also separated into 2 parts, the yolk and the albumen. The yolk was crimson in color, in contrast with the pale shades of blue around it. It looked rather appetizing. She took her first bite and was immediately impressed. Although the egg was only plainly boiled, the taste was the opposite of plain. It somewhat reminded her of a strong, fruity taste. Also, she finally got to drink the wine. The perfect combination of the wine and the egg was beyond satisfying. The taste was addictive. Before she knew it, she already ate the entire portion of the egg. Meanwhile, 6 cups of wine were downed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Di Fui consumed a portion of the egg as well, but only with 3 cups of wine. Sponsored content Gu Shijiu wanted to fill her cup with more wine, so he decided to intervene. You should not overdrink this wine, he said while keeping the bottle away. However, Gu Shijiu had not had enough. I am a great drinker. I will not get drunk even after a dozen rounds. If we are going to drink today, we have to go all out. You are so fussy. Is this how a man should behave? Di Fui watched as her face turned scarlet. You are way underage to drink this much, he slowly said as a reminder. Gu Shijiu wanted to take away the bottle in his hand. As I said, this is only restricted to my face. As she said that, dizziness took over her head, so she staggered to her feet and swayed a little. Instead of the bottle, she fell right into his arms. Her current behavior was diametrically opposed to her usual attitude. She was obviously a little drunk, and it was easy to tell from her breaths that smelled of alcohol. Sponsored content Di Fui steadied her up and said, You are drunk. He started to regret letting her drink so much, for he had overestimated her physical capability as a divine being. He thought 6 cups of wine would not make any difference, but apparently, he was wrong. I am not drunk, Gu Shijiu said in a serious tone. She tried to keep her composure and stared at him with stern authority. In fact, she would have been able to pull it off if she had not downsized to the tender look of a petite girl. She tried to be serious, but it was impossible with the adorable face of hers. Di Fui tried to hold his laughter. Right, you are not drunk. Gu Shijiu swayed a little in response. Of course, I can never get drunk. 1,000 cups will still be too little. This amount of wine can never get me drunk. Don't you try to fool me. Sure, I dare not fool you. Di Fui swiftly agreed. Meanwhile, he also fed her a pill. Sponsored content Gu Shijiu protested, this is not the one. Surely, it is not, this pill is to get you sober. As I said, I am not drunk. I do not need it. Alright, take this now, and when you are sober, I will give you the one that you wanted. Although her drunken face was adorable, her sobriety was his concern, even though he was well aware that it was probably his only chance to see her drunk. Unfortunately, she needed a clear mind in order to continue her cultivation. As he had risked a great deal to get the candle dragon's egg, he could not let it go to waste. Gu Shijiu finally listened to him and took the pill. Sponsored content Meanwhile, Di Fui casually asked, Divine Lord, do you have a name? Gu Shizhou was at a loss for words. She could not think of a name, but she did not want to make a fool of herself in front of him. She proudly said, I do not need a name. She then pulled his sleeves to ask for more wine. Do you still have any wine? Let us drink some more. Apparently, she really liked drinking. Di Fui stared at her attentively. It makes me feel rather estranged to keep addressing you as the Divine Lord. May I give you a name? What about Shizhou? Good. Good one, I did not expect you to come up with such a good name. Gu Shizhou pulled his sleeves even tighter. What if you become my disciple? Once you become my disciple, you can give me any name that you like. Dumbstruck, Di Fui certainly did not foresee the plot twist. Usually, the master would be the one naming the disciple, not vice versa. He looked at her tender face again and said, All right, if you agree to the name, I will agree to become your disciple, he jokingly said. Gu Shizhou was impressed with the young man's ability. To be honest, she had always wanted him to become her disciple. However, the only thing that she did not like was his cold and calculative mind, which was why she took so long to ask. Also, Di Fui was an arrogant man. Even if she asked him, he would definitely not agree to her proposition. The man's kung fu was unique and of his style. Even without a master to guide him through, his future would still be very promising. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Since Gu Zijia's life was already coming to an end, it seemed pointless for her to pursue a disciple that did not need her. Hence, she never really brought it up. Sponsored content nevertheless, now that she was drunk, filter in her mouth and brain no longer worked. She finally told him what she had been thinking all this time. Intuitively, she knew it was the right time to talk, so she seized the moment. All right, I promise, Di Fui promptly said. As soon as he made that promise, a streak of lightning came flashing down from within the clouds. The dazzling streak surrounded the duo like gilts flying around the air. Di Fui was dumbstruck by what had happened. Gu Shizhou, on the other hand, seemed very happy. A promise has been made, further enhanced by the streak of flash. From now on, you will be my disciple. Di Fui was still in shock and did not utter a word. Gu Shizhou kept on smiling victoriously. About that, I just remembered that my real name is Shizhou. The name that you offered resonates it just well. Sponsored content speechless, Di Fui tried to make sense of the situation. He had a feeling that he had been fooled, big time. Although he could not believe that drunk Gu Shizhou had deceived him, he was rather amused by the absurdity of the entire situation. He took a look at the sky and then looked back at her in disbelief. She could not even sit properly when she was drunk. Also, he could not believe that a joke of his would end up becoming a solemn promise. Gu Shizhou could not hide the happiness that was blossoming from within her. She reached out to him and said, What a great disciple you are. You should start showing me more respect. Here, give me some wine. Respect? Di Fui was quite puzzled by her request. I thought you would use your newly established authority to ask for the pill. She had honestly forgotten about that. All right, hand me the pill. She moved closer to him. As requested, Di Fui put a pill on her palm, and Gu Shizhou immediately popped it into her mouth. In a second, she disapproved of the pill. What a lie. The pill you gave me is to keep me sober. Sponsored content. The pills looked and tasted almost the same, but Gu Shizhou could still tell them apart even with the slightest taste. She wanted him to know that she was not someone who could be easily fooled. This came as a relief for Di Fui as he was glad that she was not too drunk. Why did you give me this pill? Because you need it, so I was being kind. Oh, but I am not drunk. People are dumb when they are drunk, but not me. I have successfully made you a disciple. Di Fui was speechless. It was a topic he would very much like to avoid right now. For the first time, he felt stupid. Sponsored content everything happened when she was drunk, so perhaps he needed to settle the matter once and for all, while she was still drunk. He then took out a pill. It was the one that Gu Shizhou had wanted from the beginning. He revealed it briefly in front of her eyes and asked, "Do you still want it?" "Yes, give it to me." "All right, repeat after me, and this pill will be yours. If you do it well, I might consider giving you 2 pills. Gu Shizhou became immediately intrigued. "What is it?" "Listen up, say, Di Fui, you are no longer my disciple." Gu Shizhou shook her head vigorously in protest. "No." She rejected his request without a second thought. Di Fui tried to persuade her, "As far as I am concerned, you do not exactly like me, do you?" "Right, you are too calculative, in my opinion." "I do not like that," Gu Shizhou told him how she really felt, and Di Fui was quite surprised to hear it. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us." Chapter 28-26, Accepting a Disciple, 5, He was mentally prepared, but it was not enough. Di Fui felt that he had been very kind to Gu Shizhou, he treated her better than all of the women that he had ever met, and yet she was still complaining about him. What was wrong with being calculative? If he had been any less calculative, he would be long dead in this brutal world. He would certainly not have lived long enough to be sitting down with her today. Di Fui could not help but feel bad. However, there was still a chance. Now that she had confessed what she actually thought about him, he should take this chance and go for more. "If you dislike me so much, why did you insist on taking me as your disciple? To make us hate each other even more. It is torture for both of us, isn't it? Let's do it. Remove me as your disciple." "No." Troubled, all of Di Fui's persuasions were met with stern rejection. Determined to see this through, he decided to go all in. "Divine Lord, you must be really cautious when it comes to taking a disciple, right? I know that Fan Qianxue has been through many obstacles in order to become your disciple. I am only a stranger to you. You barely even know me. I can be much worse than who you think I am." Gu Shizhou blinked at him after that remark. "How bad can you possibly be?" Di Fui exaggerated, "I do not like to be controlled by anyone or anything. I do not even care if it is an act of kindness. I have done many things that hurt the people who cared for me. Many years ago, I was homeless, and a man brought me in, but he never stopped trying to convince me about being his disciple. In the end, I killed him because he was annoying." Gu Shizhou gave him a look of disbelief. "I do not buy that." She knew that he would not do something that destroyed his conscience. With a smirk, he continued in a wicked tone, "You may know my face, but you do not know my heart. You have no idea who I really am." Gu Shizhou stared at him blankly with her eyes wide open, so he was not sure if she was in shock or that she did not care about what he was saying. Nevertheless, she looked adorable. In fact, Di Fui had tried very hard to suppress his urge to caress her hair. Slowly, he shifted his body towards her and continued, "Also, I like to flirt with my master. Once, a woman's life was made miserable because of me." Quietly, Gu Shizhou continued to gaze at him in a lack of engagement. Di Fui lowered his body to look into her eyes and then grasped her by the wrist and said, "After hearing all these stories, do you still want to keep me as your disciple? Aren't you worried that I might do something bad to you, too?" He tried to keep his voice low to sound as creepy as he could. He wanted her to feel a sense of danger. Gu Shizhou was finally awake from her preoccupation. She pushed his face aside and said righteously, "I cannot escape my destiny. I would rather suffer this myself than to let others go through hell for me." Obviously, Di Fui was triggered. He did not know what to answer her anymore. All he knew that was that the lady was unusually stubborn. He squinted his eyes at hers and swiftly pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. Still drunk, Gu Shizhou could barely even sit still on her own. Therefore, she would not have any strength to resist him. Hence, she fell straight into his arms. She could feel her head spinning as she asked, "What? What are you doing?" Di Fui gave her a wicked smile. "I am going to," he then stopped for a moment. After a pause, he finally said, "To kill you, after raping you." He was confident that he had definitely crossed the line, so Di Fui waited for her to defend herself. She might slap his face or kick him away any time now. He was prepared for all sorts of outcomes, which would all lead to the same, ideal situation. He was hoping that she would take back her words about taking him as a disciple. Dumbstruck, she responded in a terrible manner, "Huh?" Her gaze was locked on his face, and she looked incredibly innocent. Di Fui's heart skipped a beat as soon as their eyes met. In wonder, he could not find the words that he planned to say. Suddenly, Gu Zijia's body language suggested that she was rather disappointed. "Why do you refuse the offer? Is it because I am too pretty?" Di Fui had no answer for her ludicrous question. Chapter 28-27, Accepting a Disciple, 6, Modesty obviously meant nothing to her. Di Fui thought that Gu Shijie was sobering up, but clearly, she was still drunk. Apparently, he could not even persuade a drunken woman to change her mind. This certainly made him feel like a failure. Di Fui took a glance at her beautiful face, which then reminded him of Fan Qianshi. When they were still in the Monster Kingdom, he once saw how they interacted with one another. The way Fan Qianshi looked at her openly showed that he was obsessed with her. Irritated by the thought, he decided to pull her into his embrace. "Baby, I did not know you like it this way. Did you want me to become your disciple so that I can become obsessed with you, just like Qianshi?" For the first time, the man thought he made a powerful statement. Gu Zijia's head was still spinning. She could not seem to understand him, so she stared at him blankly. "Huh?" She swayed her body a little, but carelessly tripped over her own foot and fell forward onto Di Fui. Their lips accidentally touched each other. And since she fell hard, the kiss was a real, solid one. In fact, Di Fui could even taste some blood. Before he could push her away, she had already teleported for about 30 feet away from him. Certainly, Di Fui was stunned by her speedy recovery. He looked at her in an attempt to make a joke about the situation in order to reduce the awkwardness, but saw that she was slowly wiping her lips with a silk handkerchief. Needless to say, Di Fui he felt a little offended. No one had ever been able to come close enough to him for such an intimate exchange. She was the only one who had kissed him before, and yet she seemed disgusted. In fact, he was quite hurt by the way she teleported away from him. His frustration took over his composure as he said, "Is this how a master should treat her disciple? To welcome him with reluctance?" He did not manage to finish what he wanted to say as Gu Shijie glared at him with fierce eyes. Her eyes were bright and clear, showing no signs at all that she was drunk. She stood casually and let out a victorious smile, like a cunning little fox. "Di Fui, now that you have addressed me as your master, you should listen and do as I say. Stop talking about things that no longer matter." Di Fui continued to observe her, feeling that he had just fallen into her trap. "Were you acting drunk?" Quietly, Gu Shijie only smiled at him. She was drunk, but only for a while. She soon recovered her consciousness, thanks to her unique physique. Furthermore, Di Fui had given her a pill to help her sober up, so it only took 15 minutes for her to recover. She never thought that she would be able to get herself a disciple even when she was not able to think straight. Gu Shijie reached out her hand and said, "My great disciple, give me the pills that I have requested from you." This time, Gu Shijie spoke with a sense of authority. Di Fui paused for a little while but soon became hypnotized by her words. He did as she said and took out a pill. He knew it was against his will, but he could no longer control his movements. He had to fulfill her command. Relieved, Gu Shijie finally acquired the pill she wanted. "What have you done to me?" Di Fui calmly asked. "I cast a spell on you that makes you do as I say. As proven, it is working just fine." Di Fui touched his lips, where her taste still lingered. "So, the fall was intentional? It was just so that you could cast a spell on me?" "Yes, indeed. Di Fui scornfully replied, I have done so many things for you, and this is what I get in return. Gu Shijiu found it hard to defend her actions, but she had no other choice. The spell was the last thing that she wanted to do. However, his stories about how he killed his master and murdered the man who adopted him were quite terrifying. She was not sure if she could trust him entirely. Besides, the spell would not affect his health at all. She knew she would only use it when necessary. Chapter 28. I am reluctant to explain everything that I do. She swallowed the pill, but it tasted different again. This time, it was bitter. Gu Shijiu was certain that the pill was identical to the one she had consumed before. So, perhaps her body was the problem. She somehow felt that her sense of taste had changed. She looked at Di Fui and caught him looking at her in an unusually casual manner. The look in his eyes was not entirely friendly, though. Divine Lord, what happened to you in the Monster Kingdom was all part of my plan, but it worked, didn't it? Thanks to me, your servant and disciple are now safe. Hesitantly, Gu Shijiu answered, I agree, so I did not blame you on that. Di Fui smiled but made no further comment on the incident. However, I still felt the need to give you something in recognition of your loss, so I dived into the deep earth sea and risked my life to secure this candle dragon's egg, all for the sake of your health and well-being. I have not told you about its nutrients, have I? The candle dragon is a treasure. Every part of its body, from its scales to its bones, is enough to nourish one's vitality and nurse one's body. However, the candle dragon I encountered was essentially yang, which is incompatible with your body of yin. Its bone and flesh will not work for you. It can possibly cause more harm than good. Therefore, I decided to take its egg instead. The egg is either yin or yang, so it is perfect for your recuperation. Gu Shijiu was shocked. She did not know that she was the reason he went all the way to steal the egg. However, she still had some doubts. How did you know that we were going to meet? Di Fui replied sarcastically, I plan to visit you in Tianin Valley after I survived the challenges in Earthsea. I plan to take you all the way here to this glacier and give this egg to you as a gift. Why must I eat the egg here? Its effect can only be put to use here. Gu Shijiu did not know what to say. Why didn't you say so earlier? If she knew, she would not have cast a spell on him. I am reluctant to explain everything that I do. I will do what is best and make no regrets. Bragging about my achievement is not my style. It was his way of dealing with things. Remorse started to pour in. Did you mean that I can actually go into the vortex right after consuming the egg? The pill is not needed anymore. Absolutely. The pill will only work for first-timers. You are here for the second time, so the pill is no longer effective. If not, why would I risk my life to get the candle dragon's egg? Gu Shijiu remained silent. She finally knew why the pill tasted different, it was because it no longer worked. If he had told her about his plan, she would not have tricked him. Nevertheless, it was all too late now. Di Fui looked at her steadily and intently. Divine Lord, now that everything is said and done, would you kindly take back the discipleship? As opposed to his usual style, this time, he chose to explain everything thoroughly, which was something that Gu Shijiu was not quite used to. She heaved a sigh before conveying the disappointment, no. Shocked, Di Fui looked at her in disbelief. Still? Don't you trust me at all? It is not that I do not trust you. God has witnessed the fact that you are my disciple. If we decide to act against it, the consequences would be inevitable, summoned by the wrath of heaven. Consequences? What kind of punishment are we talking about? To be struck by 9 streaks of heavenly lightning. Di Fui smilingly said, 9 streaks of lightning are bearable to me. I am not afraid of the punishment. The oath was made out as a joke. Could there really be punishment if he insisted on going against it? Was she trying to scare him or did she really think of him as a fool? Chapter 28-29, I am reluctant to explain everything that I do, too, even if there was any punishment, he was not worried. He was willing to take the risk to regain his freedom, even if that meant depleting half of his spiritual power. In fact, it was Gu Shizhou who seemed more troubled. I am worried, the catastrophe would usually be harmless for a celestial or divine being. However, her health was obviously not at its finest. She might get killed by the heavenly lightning if struck. She could not tell him the truth, but Di Fui already knew what she was thinking. He said sarcastically, as a divine lord, are you really worried about a few streaks of lightning? Gu Shizhou insisted on keeping her deterioration as a secret. She could not tell him that she was already dying, albeit slowly. I have my own reasons. I hereby reassure you that I will not use my status as your master to make you do anything. If you are reluctant to announce it publicly, we can keep this between us. Also, I will stop using the controlling spell. This was the best she could do. Filled with guilt, she decided to give him a little something in return. She then took out a shiny, purplish pill from her storage bag. This is the marrow washing purple pill. Take one pill, and it will fuel your spiritual power, equivalent to 1,000 years' worth of cultivation. There was only one pill left, as it was produced from an extremely rare kind of herb from almost tens of thousands of years ago. She did not remember most of the things in her distant past, but the pill had made a profound impression on her as its production was a rather tricky process, thus making it so valuable. She had been through a terrible time trying to produce the pill. Only under 3 strict conditions could the pill be produced. Firstly, she needed to channel her full strength to create a steady flow of firepower. Secondly, all kinds of rare herbs were required in the process. Lastly, she must have the right alchemy skills to produce the pill. As of this moment, she had the skills, but not the strength. She did not even have the herbs anymore. Therefore, this pill was the only one left. It was impossible to get more. Gu Shizhou cherished the pill very much as it could help to increase one's spiritual power by a tremendous scale. In fact, it could also resurrect the dead as long as the person was not dead for more than 3 days. The pill was her last hope, in case she needed more time to organize her passing when her life was almost coming to an end. With the pill, she estimated that she could extend her lifespan for at least 3 to 5 years. But now, she was giving away the pill as a gift. Before Gu Shizhou even had the time to explain the nature of the pill, it was simply dismissed by Di Fui from her hand. I do not care. He pushed it hard, so the pill went flying across the air. Unfortunately, it landed in moving water, so as soon as it touched the water, it vanished completely. Shocked, Gu Shizhou teleported to the river. Sadly, it was too late for Gu Shizhou to get the pill. She was the one who made the pill, so she knew it would dissolve as soon as it was in contact with water. Even if she jumped into the water, there would be nothing left for her to trace. Thence, she had just lost something of great value to her. Trembling, she glared at him furiously. You! How could you? Di Fui seemed even more annoyed, so he answered in an unfriendly manner. Are you trying to make me surrender my freedom for this pill? Never. He could not care less and decided to leave right away. Gu Shizhou could not say anything much to defend herself. She paused for a moment before heaving a sigh. Later, she sat calmly on a snow-capped rock and started contemplating. The pill was not even meant to exist, so perhaps its disappearance was destined. But his exaggeration certainly came as a surprise to her. She would not have forced him to become her disciple in the first place if she knew this was going to happen. What a regret, she thought remorsefully. Chapter 28:30, I am reluctant to explain everything that I do. 3. Gu Shizhou never had many disciples in her lifetime. In fact, she had long forgotten about the ones in her distant past. Nevertheless, she now had 2 of them, and they were both equally annoying and troubling to her. She knew that Fan Qianxue was no ordinary boy when they first met. He had always wanted to achieve more. She was glad that his performance had been improving ever since she started coaching him. He never failed to show off any developments he had. His main weakness was that he placed too much emphasis on himself. She was especially annoyed when she knew that he grew to be fond of her. As for Di Fui, he was obviously on the same level as her in terms of the way they perceived the world. With proper training, he could possibly outshine Fan Qianshi and become a better candidate for her role. The main thing that she did not expect was his utter reluctance to become her disciple. Her plan had failed miserably, and she doubted if she would ever take in another disciple. It was unlike business, where people could easily agree on terms with highlighted benefits. Despaired, she sighed and decided to keep the matter aside. The vortex of spiritual energy should be her priority now anyway. Slowly, she walked towards the whirling winds. Di Hao was watching everything with his tracing skill. Rather surprised, he never thought that his parents shared such histories. His father was once his mother's disciple, though unwillingly. He could not help but wonder if they had ever spent time together as master and disciple. Utilizing the tracing skill was physically demanding. Luckily, the scenes were played back at great speed. He was actually reading his mother's memory that was buried in the deepest of her core, but at this rate, her entire life could be viewed in less than 2 hours. What he saw was Gu Zijia's previous life, so he could see everything that she had ever been involved in. Even when there were emotional fluctuations, he could somewhat resonate with her as well. He moved his hands slowly to relax his numb fingers before watching the next parts. What he saw might only be a glimpse, but the whole timeline of what actually happened could already be 20 years long. The next 20 years held only a faint glimmer of hope. Gu Zijia's health had become irrevocably worse, but she never showed her weaknesses to anyone. Every year, she would visit the glacier to meditate so that her unparalleled beauty and youthful looks could still be maintained. Her kung fu was also maintained at the same level, with more or less 20% left. Many things had happened. Tu Shanying, the nine-tailed fox from the Monster Kingdom, had successfully ascended the throne and become the Monster King with the help of Tian Maoan, the respectable celestial officer. The entire kingdom then flourished with prosperity. People were happy with the development. Before her, the kingdom lacked a proper constitution, so everyone lived like robbers. Those who fought better would be the leaders, and they became involved in all kinds of atrocities. The noble and the powerful would be the ones who controlled the common people's destiny. They could take someone's life easily without any need for punishment, or take away the property of someone less powerful without any compensation. It was a difficult time for the masses. The common people were scared of the noble, so they could only release their grudge on someone weaker. Needless to say, the wicked cycle continued. The stronger ones became stronger, and the weaker ones could never grow. The masses lived in dire poverty. They never knew how much time they had left, so people spent their money right away and got drunk almost every day. No one was committed enough to work, so famine spread like wildfire. As soon as Tu Shanying was crowned, she immediately assigned Tian Maoan to establish a constitution of fundamental principles. Anyone who acted against the law would be equally punished, regardless of social status and political power. When Tu Shanying broke the law, she, too, was punished by 10 lashings. The execution was even carried out publicly. Chapter 28:31, I am reluctant to explain everything that I do, for, Tian Maoan personally carried out the lashings. As a result, Tu Shanying's back was badly mutilated. The entire scene was rather violent. Alarmed, the incident had become a warning for everyone. The punishment served as a deterrent to others. Since then, the constitution was strictly abided to by everyone. Watching their leader get publicly punished, they knew they would face the same consequences if they broke the law. When Tu Shanying was lashed, Gu Shijiu was present, along with Fan Qianshi and Wu Qianyan. All three of them were disguised to blend into the crowd. It had been 6 years after their unhappy separation in the glacier. It was also the first time that she saw him again since then. She noticed that Di Fui had a significant increase in his spiritual power. Even as an officer, he managed to win the hearts of many. As soon as the man's carriage showed up, people immediately fell onto their knees to pay him the highest respect. It was rather spectacular. Gu Shijiu and her companions were sitting on the roof of a restaurant not too far away from the execution ground, unnoticed. She continued sipping her drink while casually enjoying the view from the top. Fan Qianshi and Wu Qianyan were simply spectators. "Young master, what do you think about this matter?" Wu Qianyan suddenly asked. Astonished, Fan Qianshi answered, "I will be the same someday. No, I will be better and stronger than him. I want all 6 worlds to surrender themselves to me. I will bring them to their knees and make sure they do everything as I ask." He sounded like Emperor Qin, who had the wild ambitions to unify the broken kingdoms into one empire. Wu Qianyan was obviously stunned by his response. Concerned, she gave Gu Shijiu a quick glance and caught her looking at them. Fan Qianshi immediately noticed that something inappropriate had slipped from his mouth. He knew that what he said would probably anger his master. Smilingly, he quickly corrected himself, "I was only joking. You see, I am the disciple of the creator of the universe, so I am obliged to serve the people and eradicate their karmic obstructions. Wealth means nothing to me. However, in order to properly carry out the strict enforcement of the law, one must be superior and respected by many, just like our master. She is admired and respected by the people of all 6 worlds, so any of her commands will be properly executed. Power is important, as long as one intends to put it to good use." He made good points to cover up his previous slip of the tongue. Wu Qianyan seemed quite lost but nodded at him anyway. "Young master is wise indeed." Fan Qianshi smiled victoriously. He then took a glance at Gu Shijiu and saw her swirling her cup of wine. She seemed to behave rather casually, so he was not sure if she had heard what he just said. Determined to find out, he decided to ask, "Master, was I right?" Gu Shijiu looked at him and asked, "Are you jealous of his wealth or his power?" Fan Qianshi hesitantly replied, "His power, for sure. Without power, he cannot enforce the laws of the kingdom." Gu Shijiu was quite disappointed. She could already see his wild ambitions in spite of his humble gesture. Although power and enforcement seemed inseparable, the result could be entirely different if one put too much emphasis on the pursuit of power. Troubled, she knew that she needed to teach him better. She then turned to look at the execution ground and saw that Tian Maoan was already carrying out the punishment. The ruler of the monster kingdom looked very pale and injured. The wounds on her back were bloody and gore. There was not a sound from the public. The only sound that everyone could hear was the sound of his whip from each lash. Abruptly, Tian Maoan suddenly turned and looked icily in her direction. What he saw was her departure, along with her companions. Annoyed, his fingers tightened as he beat the ruler with another strike. Unable to concentrate, his strength was harder than before, so Tu Shanying was the one who suffered the most pain. The last whip almost shredded her skin wide open. Chapter 28-32, a dramatic re-encounter. Tu Shanying almost cried out loud, but she held back her anguish. The whole idea of the punishment was meant only as a show. Tian Maoan told her that she would be a good example to show the public how serious the enforcement would be. It was only then that everyone, even the noble, would obey the law. She made a mistake on purpose, which that led her up to this point of punishment. Tian Maoan told her that the lashing and whipping would be real, but he also promised to control his strength so that she would not be harmed. Thus, she agreed. However, the last lash was so violent that she felt as if her waist was dislocated. She also wondered if her kidneys would still be functioning after this punishment. She tried hard to look at Tian Maoan so as to signal him that the pain was unbearable. The man's face was more or less expressionless, if not slightly stern. The strip of leather was still tightly clenched in his fist, which meant that he was not done. She tried to feel what he was feeling, but could never get through the icy look in his eyes that completely shielded his emotions. She had never seen him being so low before, but she had bigger things to be worried about now. There were 2 more strikes left for her to suffer. Before Tian Maoan struck her with another forceful beating, she held in her pain and quickly sent him a directed audio message to remind him, "Hey, you have been too harsh." The message managed to catch his attention, and the next lash became bearable. Even though it was still painful, she was sure that it would not jeopardize her health. Finally, the beating was tolerable again. With a sigh, Tu Shannying mentally prepared herself for the last beating. The whip landed on her back, as anticipated. That should have been the end, but another strike flashed before her eyes and struck her again. Tu Shannying was not ready for it and fell onto the ground. The last strike was loud and clear for everyone to hear. Apparently, she was not told about an extra beating. Anger started to boil her blood. There was no reason for her to suffer another beating. The common people stared at one another in dismay and at a loss for words. Although not everyone knew mathematics, the very basic form of addition or subtraction was not a big deal to them. At least their 10 fingers were enough to make them count the number of beatings. The spectators could feel the pain that the ruler of the monster kingdom had to endure. With each beating that was lashed onto her, they could feel their hearts quivering in pain as well. Everyone counted along subconsciously, so they knew that there was an additional beating. The last one was uncalled for. Enough! A voice called out loud. Tian Maoan heard the voice and looked down at Tu Shannying. He noticed that her eyes were raging with fury. Dear celestial official, what is the matter with you? Tu Shannying directed her frustration through a directed audio. You lashed an extra whipping. Utterly annoyed, she did not hold back her fury. There was no time for her to care about her reputation as a gentlewoman now. Di Fui did not answer her directed audio. Instead, he turned to look at the surrounding crowd and calmly said, as the ruler of the monster kingdom, she is also responsible for breaking the law, though she should not have. She has to be punished more severely with an extra beating. This serves as a warning to the rest of you. Puzzled, the crowd looked at another helplessly. Soon, they all nodded in obedience. The last beating became more reasonable to them after his explanation. Nevertheless, Tu Shannying was still in disbelief. She was still gritting her teeth in annoyance. Are you sure that the last beating was not caused by your lack of concentration? She sent another directed audio. Tian Maoan gave her a quick, stern look. Assume it however you like. He then tossed the strip of leather away and left. The people were actually impressed by their ruler. Not every leader, especially one that was a woman, would lead with such an example. She had proven herself to be a great leader. Certainly, the goal was achieved as well. With that message, the crowd warned one another that the law must not be broken, or they would end up like their leader. Gu Shijiu did not stay for too long in the monster kingdom. After visiting the trial grounds, she left along with Wu Qianyan and Fan Qianshi. Chapter 28-33, A Dramatic Re-Encounter, 2. In order to train them, Gu Shijiu had traveled to many places with them to immerse them in different cultures and practices. Traveling thousands of miles was better than reading thousands of books. She believed that these excursions would help Fan Qianshi as he certainly did not have a problem retaining any theoretical knowledge. What he really needed was practical training. Gu Shijiu was a responsible master. She needed to teach him everything she knew before her final moment came so that he could properly succeed in her role. Fan Qianshi did not disappoint her. He understood everything that she taught him very quickly. It was even easier when she taught him Kung Fu. Throughout the years, all three of them had been to many different worlds. Gu Shijiu only hoped that the exposure could help Fan Qianshi and Wu Qianyan become better. In order to maintain her remaining spiritual power, she would visit the glacier once every 6 months to a year. The power of the candle dragon's egg still remained in her body, thus, it shielded her from the extreme cold. However, every time she visited, the duration of her stay had to be extended. Her condition had worsened over time, so it gradually became more difficult for her to feel the flow of spiritual power in her body. The recovery of her kung fu became just as difficult, too. Occasionally, she would bump into Di Fui during her extensive travels, but she would always take another path to avoid him. She decided not to bother him anymore since he was unwilling to become her disciple. Thus far, she had not told anyone that he was her disciple. They were the only ones who knew. She never took advantage of the spell to control him to do things that were against his will. They only bumped into each other a handful of times in the past 20 years, but they never talked. They had not even taken a proper look at one another. Meanwhile, back in the Monster Kingdom, it was safe to say that the punishment inflicted on their leader had served its purpose. Every citizen adhered to the laws that were in place, thus pushing the kingdom into a stable phase of development. The Monster Kingdom led by example, so all the other kingdoms adopted their method and applied it to their own societies. Needless to say, most leaders were also well aware about Tian Maoen's presence and his help in progressing the kingdom. Therefore, all of them became desperate to have the celestial officer come over to help. Sooner or later, Tian Maoen's name as the celestial officer became widespread in all 6 worlds. After punishing the Monster King, Tian Maoen had left the Monster Kingdom for good. When he made his appearance again after some time, he already became the great sorcerer of the Celestial Kingdom. With the support of the Emperor Immortal, he then began a series of reformations in the Celestial Kingdom as well. The Emperor Immortal was a capable man with a soft heart. The people around him always swayed his decisions. Sometimes, he did not even have the heart to punish his officials. Even when a great crime was committed, he would easily change his mind about the punishment when someone started crying and begging for mercy. Eventually, most death penalties would simply be replaced with simple punishments. Thus, the constitution became negligible. Many officials still violated the law, even with full knowledge of it. Both civil and military officers had their little circles of accomplices, each with their own plans to overthrow the government. The respect that they had for the Emperor Immortal was only superficial, as they never truly looked up to him. In order to protect their own interests, the civil and military officers would form gangs to fight against one another, sending the government into a hot mess of chaos with no unity whatsoever. The common people were just as chaotic, like their own government. The Emperor Immortal knew that the chaos was partly his fault. As soon as he heard about Tian Maoen, he personally went to the lower bound to invite him over to the Celestial Kingdom. Surprisingly, the man agreed to follow him. During his first year, Tian Maoen barely did anything. He casually strolled around the Celestial Kingdom almost every day, as if enjoying his retirement. He managed to steer clear from getting any enemies, mostly due to his good looks. Being knowledgeable was also an advantage, so he soon became friends with many celestial beings. Chapter 28-34, A Dramatic Re-Encounter, 3, Indeed, many took his friendliness with caution. As time went by, they started to look down on him, thinking that his success in the Monster Kingdom was solely due to the Monster King's unfair bias for him. Tian Maoen never cared about these rumors and continued leading a casual life until it was time for him to start reforming the constitution. Once Hester, he executed his plans boldly and resolutely. Every action was specifically tailored to fix the Celestial Kingdom's worst problems. Many benefits had been stripped away from the underqualified, those who had broken the laws were brought forward to face the rightful and just consequences, either by jail sentences or death penalties. No exceptions were given. His strict enforcement had caused massive disputes, with many officials against the enforcement. They complained to the Emperor Immortal about him, however, the Emperor Immortal was very determined. He entrusted Tian Maoen with the power to do what he needed to do. A heavenly sword was also entrusted to him, along with the absolute power to execute any royalty or officials who crossed the line. If anyone ever rebelled against his ruling, he had the power to kill the rebels without having to consult the Emperor Immortal. Some of the dirty officials of the Celestial Kingdom were utterly shocked by his extensive knowledge of what they had secretly done behind closed doors. In stark contrast, the righteous ones who had previously suffered from unfair treatment became Tian Maoen's strongest executors. The Reformation reshaped the entire kingdom, just like the reforms of Shangyang during the Qin dynasty. With every little effort, the Celestial Kingdom slowly became a better place. The Emperor Immortal was satisfied by the positive change, so he depended on Tian Maoen even more. His confidence in the man's abilities grew each passing day. And soon, the Emperor Immortal declared Tian Maoen as the national master, which excused him from kneeling or paying respect to anyone. In fact, the Emperor Immortal would be the one to welcome Tian Maoen personally. In a few years, the entire government was drastically changed. Those who were capable would be appointed with great tasks while those who were incapable would be sent away. As proven, Tian Maoan had excellent skills in talent management. He could always place people in their most suitable positions where they could fully unleash their potential. Even though he only spent 8 years in the Celestial Kingdom, the place became completely unrecognizable. The main downside was that his strict enforcements had undoubtedly offended many. A good number of people wanted him dead. These people even tried to send assassins to end the man's life, but to their disappointment, the National Master was not only an excellent politician but was also equipped with great kung fu. Furthermore, the man had some of the best fighters around him, so most of the planned assassinations would end with no assassins returning. Those that survived eventually became some of his greatest fighters. When Gu Shijiu was in the Celestial Kingdom, she became well aware of his achievements. He went from being highly unpopular to a man of great contributions. People were happy to talk about him. They even had his stories written into a script in folk literature, thus making him a great legend adored by many. She bumped into him once on the streets. She was in the middle of a verbal feud with another customer while shopping for jewelry. All the jewelry made in the Celestial Kingdom was known to be equipped with tremendous spiritual energy. Wearing jewelry alone would be great for her health. Gu Shijiu saw a jade bracelet that she liked. It was emerald green and made with light translucent material. Her unpleasant incident with the bracelet that was currently attached to her wrist made it difficult for her to have a liking for other bracelets. Although, she really wanted to conceal the bracelet that she already had on her wrist just to get it out of the public's eyes. The emerald bracelet was the only one that she fancied, so she was eager to buy it. It cost a fortune, but Gu Shijiu could easily afford it. Chapter 28-35, A Dramatic Re-Encounter. 4. Gu Shijiu was wealthy enough to afford anything that she wanted. She wanted to buy the bracelet for herself, but Fan Qianxue insisted that he should be the one who bought it as a gift for her. In order to let him have real-life experience in money-making, she finally agreed to his request. She reluctantly asked the owner to reserve the bracelet for her and promised to come back in 2 months to make her purchase. There were 2 conditions for Fan Qianxue in his money-making strategy. First of all, he was not allowed to steal the money. Secondly, he had to make the money himself based on the skills that he could offer. For 2 months, Fan Qianxue worked his heart out in the Celestial Kingdom to collect the amount of money needed for the bracelet. Therefore, he could not hide the look of his excitement on his face when he could finally afford it. Quickly, he took Gu Shijiu back to the shop to pay for the bracelet as soon as he had accumulated the money. However, they arrived at the shop, only to realize that the bracelet had been brought out on display again and that there was a lady who seemed to be interested in the bracelet. The lady looked so delighted with it that she could hardly put it down. Just a moment later, he was ready to pay. There was only 1 bracelet, but 2 buyers. Both agreed to the price and were desperate to get it. The owner thought about it and suggested that they bid for it. Thence, the bracelet would belong to the side that offered the highest price. Fan Qianxue did not have more money than what he initially needed. Therefore, the bracelet would become unaffordable to him, with only a slight increase in price. He would definitely lose the bid. His face turned red as he was obviously frustrated and annoyed at the shop owner. The lady noticed his expression, and arrogantly said, "Can't you even make a bid? If you are poor, perhaps you should not even be competing for this bracelet. It belongs to me." The remark filled Fan Qianxue with indignation. In fact, Gu Shijiu was offended by the remark as well. The latter's rude behavior towards her disciple provoked her, so she decided to compete for the bracelet herself. Smilingly, she placed a stack of cash on the table in a bold manner and said, "Let's bid." The stack of cash was worth 100 times more than the original price of the bracelet, so the owner stood frozen and gasped in disbelief. He then turned to look at the lady, curious as to what she might do. The lady was equally astonished. She did not have this amount of cash with her at the moment, so there was no way she could continue bidding. Her mouth was left ajar in shock. Proud and elated, Fan Qianxue scornfully responded, "Can't you even continue the bidding? If you are poor, perhaps you should stop competing for this bracelet. It belongs to me now." He used her words against her. The lattice face could be seen blushing scarlet, as there was nothing she could say. Meanwhile, the owner was happy with the amount of money that he had just made. Delightfully, he wrapped up the bracelet with care before handing it to Gu Shijiu. "Miss, this is yours now." Gu Shijiu was ready to take it when a man suddenly interrupted the business transaction by holding the bracelet down. "Wait." His long, slender fingers caught her attention. She could not help but notice how fair his skin actually was now that he was so close to her. Furthermore, there was an emerald jade ring on his thumb to highlight his exquisite fingers. Gu Shijiu looked up and saw the mask that was made explicitly for Tian Maoan. His glistening eyes were the only features that she could see on his face. She could recognize him even at first glance, but she acted as though they had just met. Calmly, she pulled her hand away from the bracelet and asked, "What else do you have to say?" The owner knew immediately that the man was the national master, for the mask that he was wearing was of his signature style. Panicked, he quickly kneeled to pay Tian Maoan respect. Gu Shijiu knew very well that the man was Di Fui. He could tell that he was glancing at her and probably sizing her up. After all, it was their first proper encounter after 20 years. Nevertheless, the way she looked at him was rather unfriendly, like two strangers who had just met. He then looked away and focused on the lady instead. "Yan Qing, what is the matter?" The lady took a moment to find her words before telling him the entire incident in bold and straightforward terms. From her version of the story, she said that she was the first to see the bracelet. Gu Shijiu and her disciples then abruptly interrupted her and decided to compete for the bracelet with her. Without that much money, she knew that she did not stand a chance to win the bid. Chapter 28-36, A Dramatic Reencounter, 5. Di Fui listened to her quietly and waited for her to finish the whole story. "What do you have to say for yourself?" He then questioned Gu Shijiu. Irritated, Fan Qianxue explained, "My master saw the bracelet first for about 2 months ago. We even paid a deposit for it so that we could keep it until the day when I could finally afford it. We were only a couple of hours late, and yet the owner had already displayed the bracelet for other buyers." "A couple of hours? If you are late, you are late. Even if it has only been 15 minutes, Di Fui interrupted him with his point of view about punctuality. "Haven't you told your disciple that an agreement is a contract?" He continued to question Gu Shijiu. The way he made his point sounded like he was giving Gu Shijiu a lesson, which she did not appreciate. "When we arrived, the payment was not yet made, so the owner suggested that we bid for it." "Bid? How much did you bid for it?" Di Fui asked in a tone of mockery. He did not even wait for Gu Shijiu to answer before offering a full chain of precious white pearls from his pocket. He placed the pearls on the table, blinding everyone there with the pearls' eye-catching brilliance. Each pearl alone was worth 10 times more than the bracelet. There were 108 of such pearls, and the total value of it all was impossible to be measured precisely. "I will use this chain of pearls to bid for it," Di Fui proudly announced. The owner could not be happier for his sheer luck of fortune. He then turned to Gu Shijiu, patiently waiting for an answer. Gu Shijiu took a look at the chain of pearls, and then to the bracelet, and became convinced that Di Fui must have lost his mind. She wanted to buy the bracelet at first because she could easily afford it, but Fan Qianxue insisted on earning her one. He had been working non-stop for 2 months in order to meet the amount of money required, so she could not let his hard work go to waste, thence she agreed to enter a bidding war. The amount that Di Fui had offered was almost 1,000 times more than the original price. He seemed determined to win, with quite a sense of lavish generosity. It seemed odd that he would be willing to do so much for a woman she barely knew. Gu Shijiu observed the lady next to him and acknowledged that she had a beautiful face. Her stature was certainly graceful, and the look in her phoenix eyes was undeniably inviting. Perhaps the woman was the reason that he had gone mad. Nevertheless, Gu Shijiu was reminded of a sense of guilt that she had been carrying since their last encounter. If he was buying the bracelet for a woman he cared about, she did not want to complete for it with him. Therefore, she swiftly kept her stack of cash away. "I no longer want to bid for this bracelet. It is yours now." Fan Qianxue was reluctant to give up. "But master, you like the bracelet so much." Gu Shizhou had to stop him there. We do not have to comment further on this bracelet. It is only an accessory. I can move on without it. She suddenly added, by the way, I actually saw a scarlet bracelet in another jewelry shop. I like that one better, but I did not get it because we already had a reservation here. Delighted, Fan Qianshi responded, great. What are we waiting for? Let's get it. With a new bracelet in mind, they left the shop at once. The owner, on the other hand, was completely immersed in the joy of his sudden gain. The amount that he had just made valued more than all of his assets combined. He kept the pearls before selling the bracelet away to Di Fui. National Master, this is yours now. Di Fui stood quietly without any expression. Even the owner could tell that Di Fui was not happy, despite having won the bid. Thank you, National Master, for helping me out, the lady happily said. She then reached out her hand at him, full of anticipation. Would you kindly put it on me? She then pointed at the ring on his thumb and said, I like this bracelet because the color matches with the ring that you are wearing. With the bracelet still on his palm, Di Fui answered scornfully, when did I say that I was going to give this to you? Chapter 28:37, A Dramatic Re-Encounter, 6, Yan Qing was at a total loss for words. Who did you buy it for? The bracelet was clearly too feminine for him to wear. In an instant, Di Fui gave the bracelet a flick and shattered it into many tiny pieces. I bought this because I'd like to hear the sound of it getting shattered. He then turned and swiftly left. His action had left Yan Qing and the owner speechless. Gu Shizhou ended up choosing a pink translucent bracelet with a smooth texture. Its faint shades of scarlet complemented her fair skin rather well. The bracelet was a gift from Fan Qianshi, who had spent his entire savings of spiritual pearls on it. He was happy to see the bracelet on Gu Zijia's wrist and was finally able to put the previous bitter encounters behind him. Just like any other girl, Wu Qianyan would not object to the idea of jewelry as well. She was there with Gu Shizhou and Fan Qianshi all day long. When she saw the pink bracelet dangling on Gu Zijia's wrist, she, too, wished she had one, but she never showed any interest. She looked around the jewelry shop and found a small jade hairpin that she actually liked, but the ridiculously high price scared her off. Quietly, she touched her empty purse and immediately realized that she would never be able to afford the bracelet in her lifetime. Nevertheless, before Gu Shizhou made the payment, she asked the owner to pack for the jade hairpin as well. At first, Wu Qianyan thought that Gu Shizhou liked the hairpin as well and had bought it for herself. Without batting an eyelid, she decided to remain silent, though she was quite disappointed on the inside. When everything was paid for, Gu Shizhou waved at her and said, "Come here." Wu Qianyan did not know why her master had called for her, but she approached Gu Shizhou regardless. "Master," she addressed Gu Shizhou. Gu Shizhou turned Wu Qianyan's body around so that she could put the hairpin in her hair. "This hairpin suits you quite well. I am giving this to you as a gift," she said while examining the outcome. Delightfully, Wu Qianyan thanked Gu Shizhou for her kindness. She then turned to look at Fan Qianshi, hoping that he would pay her a compliment. But to her dismay, Fan Qianshi only threw her a quick glance and commented harshly, "It is incompatible." She was not sure what he actually meant by the word incompatible. Nonetheless, she trusted her intuitions, which told her that he was implying that the bracelet was too elegant for her to carry. After all, they had spent enough time together for her to understand his thoughts. There was a glimpse of disappointment in Wu Qianyan's eyes, but she soon got over it. Gu Shizhou took a look at Fan Qianshi and shook her head. The boy had always been quite harsh on Wu Qianyan. He especially enjoyed it every time he knocked her down, to the point where he was basically tearing her up. The silly girl, however, still liked to stick around with him. What a pair of troubled friends, Gu Shizhou thought. She actually wanted to match them up but had a feeling that it would not end well. Marriage could not be built without a common ground, so instead of injecting them with false hopes, she would like them to take their steps slowly and develop feelings for one another over time. For the past 20 years, Fan Qianshi's behavior had been acceptable enough. What he had for Gu Shijiu was nothing short of respect. Furthermore, he did not cross any lines. Gu Shijiu used to hold a strong guard against him, but slowly, she became more comfortable around him when she realized that he was no longer trying to woo her. Relieved, she was happy that the boy finally cleared his head. When she finally felt that it was time to move forward, she decided that it was time to take them both on a trip around all 6 worlds. When Fan Qianxue was 18, Gu Shijiu once sent him out for missions alone. He was assigned with challenges of varying difficulties, but he could always accomplish them with flying colors, which made Gu Shijiu proud. Birthdays are meant to be celebrated, regardless of race. And when a person was highly respected in the society, their birthday celebration would naturally become an important date to be remembered. Gu Shijiu had walked the earth since the beginning of time, long enough for her to forget many things through the course of time. Although she no longer remembered when her birthday actually was, the kings from all 6 worlds and her disciples still insisted on celebrating her birthday. Firstly, the celebration served as an opportunity for a reunion. And secondly, they wanted to be closer to the creator of the universe. Chapter 28:38, A Dramatic Reencounter. 7. Many people asked about her birthday before, but she could no longer remember the exact date. Encouraged by their constant requests, she decided to make the day of her awakening her birthday. Her birthday was not celebrated every year, but once every 5 years. During that time, her friends from all over the world would come to visit her in Tianyin Valley to celebrate it with her. The 6 kings would be present every year, along with their government officials and entourages. The creator of the universe preferred serenity over hustles and bustles, so all birthday attendees would carefully choose their companions, with the selection restricted mostly to the people of social or political power. Tian Maoan was absolutely qualified to be one of the attendees, but he never cared to take part in the celebration for almost a decade. The Monster King and the Emperor Immortal had invited him to come but were both turned down. He was clearly reluctant, so they respected his decision. To everyone's surprise, he showed up this time. Both the Monster King and the Emperor Immortal were present, along with the King of the Underworld, the King of the Beasts, and the Mortal King. All of them were presenting their birthday gifts to Gu Shijiu, who was seated in the highest chair in the Grand Hall. All of the kings were very competitive with their gifts. The trait was clearly reflected in the valuable gifts that they had brought with them. They all wanted to best each other so they could be seen as a leader of style and wealth. Fan Qianxue was assigned to receive the gifts and found himself rather occupied. While collecting the gifts, a boy servant from outside of the hall came reporting, "Mr. Fui is here for your birthday, my divine lord." Everyone looked at one another, unsure of the identity of the guest. It was only Gu Shijiu who realized that the man could be Tian Maoan. He once introduced himself as Di Fui to her. Could it be him? Soon, a man in purple robes gracefully entered the hall. Tu Shaning and the Emperor Immortal were both surprised by his sudden entrance and stood immediately. The Celestial Officer. The National Master. Quite astonished, the newcomer was indeed Di Fui. He decided to show his true appearance this time. There was no mask to conceal his charming and handsome face. He dominated the hall with the sheer aura of his character, and the place immediately bloomed with light. It had been years since Tu Shaning last saw him. The first sight of him immediately reminded her of the 11 beatings that she had suffered years ago. The Emperor Immortal was surprised to see him too. Delightfully, he greeted him, "National Master, I did not know that you were coming today. Have a seat here." Others rose and approached him with small talk as well, while Gu Shijiu watched as the whole event unfolded. The past 20 years had completely shaped him. He was no longer had the youthfulness of being young. Instead, today, he presented himself with strength, maturity, and, most certainly, his charm. Times had changed him. He had become a highly sought-after man in all 6 worlds. She thought about how Mr. Fui had introduced himself and wondered if he was using his original name from now on. Then, she subconsciously thought of the emerald bracelet that she could not get from the shop where she last bumped into the man. Honestly, she liked the hues of green very much and was a little sad that the same tone of color could no longer be found anywhere else. Rarely would she actually like something so much, but when she finally found it, the deal was blown. As for Fan Qianxue, he was obviously repelled by the newcomer. He should be serving the guests, so it was supposed to be his job to host the man, but he could not bring himself to approach him. When his eyes finally caught Di Fuyus, Fan Qianxue immediately raised his chin to show the man some authority. Back when they were arguing for the bracelet, Fan Qianxue was disguised as a common man, so there was nothing he could do even when he was bullied. Nevertheless, in this hall, he was the disciple of the creator of the universe, so his status was definitely higher than the so-called national master. He deserved to be a little arrogant. Chapter 28-39, A Dramatic Reencounter, 8, Wu Qianyan did not find Di Fui appealing as well. She had no scruples about her feelings toward him and casually added, as the national master of the celestial kingdom, why didn't you come with the Emperor Immortal? Isn't it inappropriate to come later than the Emperor Immortal himself? Usually, the Emperor or the king's men would either arrive first or together with their leader, but never later. In fact, Di Fuy's delay was quite disrespectful to the Emperor Immortal. Wu Qianyan had a point, but Di Fui was not concerned about it. Instead, he took a glance at the Emperor Immortal to see if he had anything to add. The Emperor Immortal knew that he had to say something to dissolve the awkwardness. He quit his position as the national master almost 6 months ago. He is not one of us now. This announcement came as a shocking revelation to the crowd who were unaware of this change in status. All of them wanted him to stand by their respective kingdoms, as a talent like Di Fui was hard to come by. Tu Shaning was the first to voice her interest. All of a sudden, her back pain was no longer an issue. She cordially invited him to come by the Monster Kingdom, as the position as the celestial officer had always been his for the taking. Others from the underworld, the Devil Kingdom, and the mortal world chimed in eagerly. In order to persuade him, all of them started sharing about the good sides of where they came from. It then became a rather heated debate. Fan Qianxue was quite annoyed. Was Tian Maoan here to ruin the party? It was supposed to be a birthday celebration for the god of creation, but the center of attention had been shifted to the newcomer instead. He took a look at Gu Shijiu, who was still in her high chair. Master, should we send the troublesome man away? He directed an audio to her. With her chin rested on one hand, Gu Shijiu casually answered, not necessary. He is considered as our guest. Eventually, Di Fui had to cease the violent exchange of diverging views with a clap. Everyone, I am here to wish the Divine Lord happy birthday. If you'd like to keep arguing, please do it outside. There was a sense of authority in his voice that made it sound quite intimidating. A long pause immediately followed. Nevertheless, in order to please him, they all pretended as if nothing had happened and went on with some fake laughs. They claimed that they were only inviting Mr. Fui over to their kingdoms as a guest and not for business purposes. Instantly, they stopped arguing with one another and apologized to Gu Shijiu. Politely, Gu Shijiu waved her hand to dismiss it. And just like that, the place was once again filled with only joy and laughter. All but for Fan Qianxue, who was still not happy. He had a feeling that Mr. Fui was not here to join the birthday celebration but to hold a demonstration. Was he trying to show the Divine Lord how popular he was? Alarmed, Fan Qianxue was suddenly alert of the potential danger. Di Fui had successfully established his popularity in 2 different kingdoms. Slowly but surely, he would unite the people of all 6 worlds and emerge as their ruler, like an uncrowned king. There was a chance that he would surpass his master if he kept this up. Annoyed by the thought, he made a promise to himself that he would never see it happen. The only ruler of all 6 worlds was the creator of the universe, not the man who he loathed on sight. Di Fui looked at Gu Shijiu and presented her with a brocade box. Divine Lord, I hereby wish you a happy birthday. The gift is a little something from me, I hope you like it. The brocade box was very eye-catching, so the people around them immediately assumed that the item in the box was something valuable. On the other hand, Gu Shijiu felt troubled at the sight of him. She could tell that Mr. Fui did not show up out of the blue for nothing. He must be working on something, though she had yet to figure it out. He was still waiting for her to accept the gift, so she asked Fan Qianzhi to take it. Reluctantly, Fan Qianzhi stepped forward. Di Fui, however, backed up instead. Divine Lord, this gift is of immeasurable value, so I do not wish to see it getting in someone else's hands. Please accept the gift personally. Fan Qianzhi was clearly angered. Tian Maoan, you are out of line. The Divine Lord did not even accept the Emperor Immortal's gift personally.